YouTube, it's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, according to recent reports, and according to some sources that I reached out to, 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer, who's currently the undisputed super middleweight reigning champion and is widely considered the face of the sport of boxing and pound for pound top 3 best fighters in the world, Saul Canelo Alvarez, 57 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, 39 big wins by way of knockout, 31 years of age, 5'8", with a 70-inch arm reach, will agree to face off against undefeated 2-division world champion, WBC reigning middleweight world champion, superstar boxer, who is 32 wins, no losses, no draws, 22 wins by way of knockout, 31 years of age, 6 feet tall with a 74-inch arm reach, that being Jermall Charlo. May 7th, Cinco de Mayo weekend, and it looks like it could possibly be taking place in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile, or could even take place in Texas, okay? With that said, according to my sources and people close to Jermall Charlo, that this is going to be the case. Barring anything unforeseen taking place, you're going to get Jermall Charlo versus Canelo Alvarez. Now, just 2 weeks ago or so, maybe a little bit more, there was a lot of talk of Jermall Charlo and Canelo Alvarez agreeing to a fight, and that Canelo Alvarez had sent Jermall Charlo an offer sheet, and Jermall Charlo was going to mull it over and make a decision, okay, whether he wanted to accept it or not. There's also talks that Canelo Alvarez could be receiving $50 million to face off against Jermall Charlo, with Jermall Charlo making $10 million. Okay, so there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of talk surrounding this fight. And with that said, they're looking for a venue. They're looking for a place to stage it where they could get the most money possible. It's going to be on Showtime pay-per-view with the PBC, Premier Boxing Champions. Canelo Alvarez, his last fight was with Caleb Plant for Undisputed. That was November 5th. That was on PBC. That was Showtime pay-per-view. And it reportedly did 850,000 pay-per-views. This is a highly anticipated fight that Jermall Charlo had been seeking out since they both campaigned at 154 junior middleweight. Jermall Charlo became Canelo Alvarez mandatory at middleweight 160, and now he's willing to go up to super middleweight 168 to challenge Canelo Alvarez and get his opportunity. Okay, so according to the sources that are close to me telling me that it's just about done. Again, there was a lot of traction with this fight 2 weeks ago. There was a lot of intrigue. A lot of people were interested to see this fight. A lot of people were interested to see, if it actually was going to come to fruition. A lot of excitement. And I think that they may have threw it out there, to see if the fans bite. Okay. So I think it's a strong possibility, it was leaked to see how the fans react to it, to gauge the temperature, if this is something that the fans are willing to support and get behind, because there's big money and for the promotions for a big fight of this magnitude to take place, and nobody at this time wants to lose money. So with that said, it's interesting because we know well-renowned trainer, 2-time trainer of the year, and longtime trainer Canelo Alvarez, Eddy Reynoso, he seems to be eager to go out on a limb now. Initially, Eddy Reynoso, when this fight was being talked about at its highest, okay, and it garnered so much attention, Eddy Reynoso, he stated that there was a lot of options still on the table. That Canelo Alvarez was still mulling over the possibility of going up to cruiserweight, the new cruiserweight limit of 190. Since the bridgerweight division was added to the sport of boxing, cruiserweight went from 200 to 190. Okay, so now you have a bridgerweight division. And so with that said, there's also the opportunity for Canelo Alvarez to go to light heavyweight, campaign at light heavyweight, and become undisputed at light heavyweight in under a calendar year. He could do so. Okay, he could become the mandatory for Joe Smith Jr., who's the WBO light heavyweight reigning champion right now, currently as it stands. Canelo Alvarez held the World Boxing Organization, the WBO title. And the way the WBO operates is that if you petition them to be mandated for the weight class right above you, for the champion right above you, they'll do so, okay? They'll oblige you. So with that said, he has the opportunity to become the mandatory for Joe Smith Jr., who just recently fought. And Joe Smith Jr., he acknowledged that Canelo Alvarez could be a possibility for his next fight, okay? And Joe Smith Jr., he's known as a big puncher, powerful puncher. He's known for knocking Bernard Hopkins out the ring. That was his highlight of his career. Joe Smith Jr. is 28 wins, 3 losses, no draws, 22 big wins by way of knockout. He's 32 years of age, 6 feet tall with a 76-inch arm reach. He recently fought against Steve Gafford, and he got a stoppage victory over Steve Gafford. And, he acknowledged that it could be a possibility that he faced Canelo Alvarez next. And Joe Smith Jr., he stated that he would love to face off against Canelo Alvarez, but he would much rather become undisputed at light heavyweight. But that's a fight that's very winnable for Canelo Alvarez. Joe Smith Jr. is very predictable. He relies on his power. He's not very mobile. He doesn't show to have a very, very high ring IQ, but he is a big, strong, powerful puncher that if he clips you, it could be good night, Irene. Okay, so with that said, Joe Smith Jr. definitely has a lot of power. Joe Smith Jr. definitely, is a big guy, but it's definitely a winnable fight for Canelo Alvarez, and they could fight next. And Joe Smith Jr., he's in shape. He didn't take much punishment in the fight against Steve Gafford, if any, so Joe Smith Jr. can be available to fight in May, okay? You still have all of February, you still have all of March, and you still have all of April. So Joe Smith Jr. can be available for May, Cinco de Mayo weekend. And then Canelo Alvarez, I expect him to win the fight against Joe Smith Jr. Then Canelo Alvarez could set up a fight with Artur Beterbiev, who's the unified light heavyweight WBC IBF champion, who's undefeated. And I expect him to win that fight. Artur Beterbiev, he recently fought against Marcus Brown. He dominated the fight. But I wasn't highly impressed with Artur Beterbiev. Wasn't impressed with Marcus Brown. And so with that said, I definitely believe that that's a fight that Canelo Alvarez could win. Artur Beterbiev, is long in the tooth. 17 wins, no losses, no draws. 17 wins by way of knockout. He's 36 years of age, 5'11" with a 73-inch arm reach. So he's not the biggest guy. He's actually shorter than Caleb Plant, with a shorter arm reach than Caleb Plant. Okay, so he just has more power than Caleb Plant. But again, he's predictable. A guy that Canelo Alvarez, he's not very mobile either. Guys with mobility, with range and athletic ability that have pure boxing skills are the ones that's going to trouble Canelo Alvarez. So let's say Canelo Alvarez beat Joe Smith in May. Then he beats Artur Beterbiev in September. Okay, now he holds 3 belts in under a calendar year, and he goes into a big undisputed showdown with Dimitri Bivol, who is the reigning, WBA light heavyweight world champion. And again, another fight that I believe that Canelo Alvarez can win. Okay, many people think Dimitri Bivol's style and size and athletic ability with his power and boxing ability is going to be the one to give Canelo Alvarez the most problems. I don't think there's either guy at light heavyweight that could give Canelo Alvarez the problems. Okay, Dimitri Bivol, 19 wins, no losses, no draws, 11 wins by way of knockout. So he's not the biggest puncher in the world. He's 31 years of age, 6 feet tall with a 72-inch arm reach. Again, so he's not presenting any size or skill set that Canelo Alvarez has not seen. And he is slightly mobile, but he's not overly mobile. He's not overly athletic. He's not, going to present a style like Floyd Mayweather or Demetrius Boo-Boo Andrade. So that's a winnable fight for Canelo Alvarez as well, okay? Which I think that Canelo Alvarez for sure can beat Dimitri Bivol. I think Canelo Alvarez actually stops all of these guys, okay? I think he stops Dimitri Bivol. I think he stops Artur Beterbiev. And I think he stops Joe Smith Jr., okay? And if he don't stop Joe Smith Jr., he'll definitely outbox Joe Smith Jr. for sure. for he'll outbox Joe Smith Jr. So those are all en route to victory. So initially, Eddy Reynoso, he stated that, you know, Canelo Alvarez is going to weigh out his options. You know, he still had Mukubu at cruiserweight, okay, a cruiserweight who Ilunga Mukubu is a guy that has been stopped brutally by Tony Bellew, you know, but he presents the weak link, you know, at cruiserweight, and that's why many people like Floyd Mayweather feel like Canelo Alvarez picked him. He's 28 wins, 2 losses, no draws, 25 big wins by way of knockout, but he was knocked out twice in his career. He's 6 feet tall with a 74-inch arm reach, okay? So he's the exact physical size as Caleb Plant, height-wise, okay? Now, obviously, Caleb Plant is a 68-pounder, and he's a 190-pounder, so he's going to weigh more. But he has a mandatory coming up January 29th against Mukunu, who's 23 wins with 5 losses, no draws. So, you know, Canelo Alvarez initially wanted to fight, you know, Mukubu, okay? He was brutally knocked out by Tony Bellew May of 2016, okay? And his pro debut back in 2008, June of 2008, he was knocked out in that fight, okay? So those are the 2 knockout losses in his career. And, you know, he's shown vulnerabilities. Again, Tony Bellew brutally knocked him out. So it's not a surprise for many people to feel like that's why he was being picked by Canelo Alvarez and targeted by Canelo Alvarez. So with that said, you know, many people, they want to see Canelo Alvarez with big challenges. Well, to me, in my opinion, I don't see any big challenges for Canelo. Yes, all of these guys can win because of size, but skill-wise, they don't present much to defeat Canelo Alvarez. So Jermall Charlo, you know, he's the same size as Mukubu, 6 feet tall with a 74-inch arm reach, okay? Obviously, again, weight-wise, he don't carry the same weight as Mukubu, but Jermall Charlo is a big guy, but he's more skilled, okay? I think he presents the biggest challenge to Canelo Alvarez out of all of these guys. And so this is a fight, again, Jermall Charlo had been seeking out for quite some time. He has power, he has skill, but again, Jermall Charlo is not very mobile, okay? He'll be standing in front of Canelo Alvarez, and the fights with Matt Karabov for Jermall Charlo in 2018, and the Sergey Derevyanchenko fight in 2020, September, and Montiel fight, his last fight in June of 2021, they showed me a lot. When you're aggressive with Jermall Charlo and you press Jermall Charlo, he's not as effective as he is coming forward, okay? He could be counterpunched. Canelo Alvarez is a great counterpuncher. He's arguably the best, top 3 best counterpunchers in the sport of boxing. Very fast hands. He doesn't have the fastest feet, but he has power, and he puts his combination together beautiful. Canelo Alvarez is very accurate. Canelo Alvarez, you know, is disciplined. He's, you know, committed to the sport of boxing. And he's a study hall. So, you know, Canelo Alvarez, he knows what Jermall Charlo's bringing to the table. And I believe Canelo Alvarez is going to beat Jermall Charlo. Looked like Montiel had opportunities to stop Jermall Charlo in their fight. I wasn't impressed by that performance. I wasn't impressed by the performance against Matt Karabov. I thought the Matt Karabov performance was an anomaly, because I thought that watching Jermall Charlo, his identical twin brother who fights at junior middleweight and is the 2-time champion there, lose to Tony Harrison, I thought that affected him. But then when I watched him fight Sergey Derevyanchenko, and then I watched him fight Montiel, and that wasn't the case, there wasn't the same circumstances, and the performance wasn't impressive, I'm starting to think that it's just a kink in his armor that just shows up, okay? So Canelo Alvarez is a much better skilled, much better decisive puncher, much more accurate, you know, much more power than those guys, and he has a better chin, and he's more experienced. So I can't see Jermall Charlo. I can see him winning the fight, but I don't think he will win the fight. But it looks like it's going to take place May 7th, Cinco de Mayo weekend. Team Charlo, they believe it's going to take place, and from my understanding, Eddy Reynoso and Canelo Alvarez have agreed now to make this fight happen after weighing out their options, and it looks like it's going to take place. It looks like they're looking for a venue. Is it going to take place in Texas, Cowboy Stadium? We know there's talks that Errol Spence and Yordenis Ugas could take place April 16th at Dallas Cowboy Stadium in Dallas, Texas. So with that said, you know, that's the very April, May. You got 3 weeks later. Are you going to have, you know, Jermall Charlo, Canelo Alvarez, the same venue, possibly. You know, Cowboy Stadium is worthy of holding it and hosting it. Canelo Alvarez has a massive fan base in Texas. Okay, Jermall Charlo obviously is from Houston, Texas, so he has a fan base. So it only makes sense to put it there and have it on pay-per-view. So we got to see how this unfolds. But obviously, Las Vegas is another option. And so the venue is what's preventing it from being announced. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
This is Amanda, the Real Deal Serrano, and you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.